Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn, and I run the services at medcommsnetworking.com. So various information, services, resources, activities for people who work across the world in and around medical communications, medical education, medical publishing, pharma industry, associated businesses, and so on. You'll find lots of information at medcommsnetworking.com and associated websites. So, for instance, if you're interested in joining the business, maybe as a medical writer, an account manager, whatever, go to First Medcoms Job. You'll find lots of information specifically for you. You'll also find over at NetworkPharma TV, we've now got hundreds of videos, many of which have been recorded from webinars like this, but also other video content. So go and have an explore if you've not done so already. These webinars are great because we can get people coming in from all over the world. We've got another an international audience again, but we could talk about all sorts of interesting topics, basically, and a whole variety of topics. Today, I've got the team from Avalere, Avalere Health, who've come on board to tell us a little bit about their relaunch. So what used to be Fishawack is now Avalere. A number of the names that some of us would have known over the years have disappeared underneath that. I'm interested, frankly, in a couple of things. One is, why do you go through the pain of rebranding like that, and the practical problems of changing email addresses and all the rest of it. But also, I know it's a response to the changing marketplace. So hopefully we'll talk a bit about the way things are changing out there as well. So over to you guys. We've got a presentation, Q&A. Members of the audience, please come in with your questions at any time through the text boxes. But I'm going to shift now and hand over to Gary, I think, to kick off the presentation. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks very much, Peter. And hi to everybody out there. Great to see some familiar names in the chat. And yeah, please do keep that chat going. Look forward to connecting with you during this meeting and beyond, of course. So yeah, we're here today to talk about Avalere Health, the update to our business, which, as Peter's mentioned, has been rebranded from Fishawack Health. Probably good for us to have a brief round of introductions before I get the ubiquitous slides up. So why don't we do that? And I'll kick off by saying, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Gary Lyons. I'm Chief Transformation Officer for Avalere Health in the medical part of the business. Just a brief expansion on that. I've always been passionate about, I guess, innovation, transformation, and strategy. It's why I came into the industry quite a few years ago now, when I worked in pharma, worked on brand strategy. And really, since then, I've been always interested in how we put strategy together, the insights that make that flow, and we'll talk about that further in this presentation. But really, what's led me into medical communications is it's such an innovative space. It's always ever changing. And really, that's where we are now, isn't it? We're seeing a world that is changing really rapidly, and we'll talk about that a little bit further. But we've got a great opportunity, I think, all of us, to be part of this exciting move forward into this medical affairs space that's evolving rapidly. So I'll talk about that a bit more, but I'll pass over to Andree to perhaps say a few words about yourself.
Thanks, Gary, and hi, everyone. I'm Andree Rose. I'm a Senior Director of Scientific Strategy here at Avalere Health. I work really closely with Gary in that role and with my fellow strategists in the Medical Strategy Excellence team, which we will talk about a little bit in the presentation. So my journey in MedComms, I've been in the industry now over 20 years. It's probably actually closer to 25, which is really giving away my age. But I think it just speaks to the fact that this industry, and as those of you out there, working in it know as well, it's just such an exciting place to be in terms of the science and bringing that science to life and telling those scientific stories. And the science is just getting more and more interesting and more complex. So it makes our jobs, I think, more challenging. It never gets boring. So I'm just very happy to be here today and for this discussion about that and what it means for us all. And I'll hand over to Natasha.
Thank you. I'm Natasha. I'm the head of insight at Avalere Health. My background's a little bit different. Still all in healthcare, but I had a psychology degree, got fed up of academia and decided, what can I do with this skill set? Fell into market research, fell into healthcare market research, and then loved it from pretty much the first project. So for the last 17 years, I have been doing this. All I've been doing is asking big questions of physicians, patients, carers, allied health professionals, anyone who's in that healthcare space, and delivering the kind of insight that, to Andree's point, turns that science into the application to bringing it to life. So that's me. I'll hand over to Nick.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick. I'm Nick Holmes. I'm the VP of Employee Experience at Avalere Health. My job, hopefully, is quite simple. I'm accountable for how our 1,600 human beings think and feel at work. So my job very simplistically, is to make work not suck. And that's my job. So everything from our physical locations to how you learn at work, to how you experience your line manager and leadership relationships, to our career experience technology, all sits with me and my little army of think and feelers at work. So I'm very, very excited to be here and talk to you. I had a bit of a unique journey as well. I used to be I have to say this in quotation marks, but professional actor, because I did some very, very terrible things in shows and that I can't really credit to. And then I joined now Avalere Health about 2.5 years ago, because my purpose is to change the way we work, and our purpose as an organization is to make the world healthier, which is so exciting. So for me, our purpose is just synergized really beautifully. So I'm very happy to be here and talk to you guys today. Gary, over to you to share some slides.
Thanks very much, Nick. I guess I need to use the pun there. The stage is marvelously set, so I shall share screen. Here we go. Hopefully everybody can see this. I'll just put the slides up onto full screen mode. Hope that's okay. Right, so yes, we're here today to talk about the update for Avalere Health. Thank you again for joining us, and want to talk about science and I guess how it's been redefined with all the exciting developments that we're really seeing today and into tomorrow, I guess, as well. So what we're going to cover today. So let's just focus a little bit on how med affairs is changing. I think we're all aware it's changing. Just some observations on what that change really means, where it's kind of leading towards. And really that gets us nicely into how Avalere Health is being set up and evolving itself to respond to the changing landscape, not just in medical affairs, but pharmaceuticals at large. You know, we're seeing a lot of change right across the pharma space, aren't we, in biotech, and really the way the different functions in companies are coming together more so than before. We're going to touch on medical strategy in so much as there's a need to really navigate through all this change and what that really means for how we develop strategy. And as Natasha was saying, insight lies at everything. It's so important to understand where the insight comes from and what it points towards. That obviously directs strategy, and it directs, you know, a lot of the activity that we do as well. And then, as Nick was saying, we'd like to then talk a little bit about what's it like to work at Avalere Health, what's the experience, and really bring that to life. And hopefully we'll be doing some of that ourselves as well as we go through this presentation. And then over to you for Q&A. You know, it's we're part of the industry and the community along with all of you. So I look forward to an active discussion on burning questions. So with that in mind, let me press on. So let's talk about medical affairs and how it's evolving. It's a space that we've been talking about, say we, Fishawack and Avalere, when we go back 3 or 4 years, about how this space has been talking. I think I've done a couple of plenary sessions at ISMAP in the last few years about the changes in medical affairs. I think we've all seen this for some time now, haven't we? And what I mean by that is that the treatment of health has been evolving the last 15 years remarkably. For those of us who go back in this industry, we've seen these kind of, and I like to characterize it as these 3 stages of evolution, where we've had the kind of doctor focus or the brand focus at the center that's been directing, you know, broad messaging, you know, no segmentation, really simple storytelling really around asset and its data, to where we've kind of got to recently, which is putting patients and HCPs more at the center of things. And really that's, a lot of that's driven by technology. You know, we know there's greater access to information than ever before. COVID came along, of course, and changed the way we work, the way we see technology, the way we interact with technology. And that's led to a much stronger patient voice, of course. And then as we go forwards, what we probably going to see more of in the future, and we call it network at the center, is people working together in complex patterns, you know, based around insight, based around clinical need, based around shared decision making. And it's not so much focusing on a patient or focusing on a HCP or another stakeholder. It's focusing on how the interactions between those together and the journey, all those key constituents of the process, let's say, move forwards together. And really, when we look at those 3 stages and what it means to medical affairs, as you can see on the screen, there's these increasing focus of medical affairs into different areas, which is expanding. Their role is expanding within the pharmaceutical operation. I think we're aware of that, but this nicely breaks down just where that focus is increasing. So, you know, for example, patient engagement, which was never really a focus of medical affairs in years gone by. It was much more about the HCPs. That's come really to the fore more recently, and will continue to accelerate into the future in terms of that increased focus. Likewise, you know, the impact on the life cycle, the clinical development from early stages. Medical affairs has a much stronger input there because of insight, because of thinking about the evidence that's needed towards regulatory approval and beyond. That has a massive impact on the type of conversation that needs to take place around target product profile, early clinical design, and thinking about how customers should be engaged around disease state and assets into the future. So we're seeing lots of ways in which medical affairs is pushing out. And of course, we're all aware of the technology and how that's rushing forwards in terms of AI, and that's generative AI, and of course, machine learning oriented AI, let's say. That's really coming in at the moment. I'm sure we're all having conversations about that in different ways, and I'm sure it'll be part of the Q&A later. But you know, it's really just, it's a symptom really that the technology is driving engagement in this space. And before we get to AI, of course, we're seeing a lot more focus on omni-channel engagement and how we think about customizing, personalizing communication in the medical affairs space. And that is where a lot of conversations I know are taking place currently. So these are some of the ways in which we see that medical affairs is shifting. So I guess the question is, well, what does that really mean? What do these changes mean? And I think it really points to the fact that all our skills are needing to develop to embrace the changing landscape. And that's a part segue maybe to Nick at the end about how we do foster and develop skills within Avalere Health specifically. But within the industry at large, I think we're needing to see much more focus on that ability to not only think about the scientific strategy and the content and the story, that's all important, but the audience that we're trying to connect with, how we make that audience bigger, how we think about what the patient voice and insight means when we're communicating with HCPs and other key constituents, how we break those down into segments and personas, how we reach out to those individually, and how we also engage using the complex tools and journey approaches that are now available, as I was saying before. AI has got a place, or will certainly have a place in the future around engagement for sure, as it will probably in all elements shown on the left-hand side of this slide. But really, when we think about the skills that we need to move forward to embrace some of these landscape changes, we're going to need to develop our technical capability, our strategic capability, but we also need to be helping to enable the medical affairs clients to be acting much more as business leaders, you know, and to be able to affect the changes they need to make within pharma, for them to be able to bring functions together. Because some of these solutions that are needed are complex. You know, we need different teams to work together to face some of these more complex challenges in terms of raising awareness of, you know, really complex disease states, all the different real-world evidence as well as clinical evidence. There's a lot of different things to bring into the mix, and how we bring that together really is really critical, I think, to future success in and around medical affairs. So I think this is really why it's such an exciting time to be in this space, because there's so much potential for development for all of us in this industry. I think it's really exciting to think about the way we think about our audiences, the way we think about science, the way we think about engagement. These all lend themselves to really interesting and ways of developing our own skills and really thinking about the solutions that we bring for our clients, all of us in this collective room here. I think it is a fantastic time to be in this industry. So what does that really mean then in terms of where we go with these kind of landscape view? I think what it really means is that there's a greater need than ever to really put a focus on linking together that complex landscape and situation, think about the insight that's really coming through from all the different stakeholders that are, I guess, working together to ultimately impact patient outcomes and improve the lives of patients through bringing evidence and bringing insight. So the insight piece is really, really critical, and I'll hand to Natasha shortly about that further. But we think of navigating through the landscape in terms of understanding the situation, really digging into insight, and then thinking about what that really means for the strategic direction, and that can be story, that can be journey, it can be scientific communication planning, but there's really much more insight and evidence than ever before to think about what goes into that strategy. So ultimately, of course, we want to engage in a way that really builds experience. We know that our customers that we reach out to ultimately through our clients, the HCPs and other stakeholders, they want modularized, bite-sized content. We know there's a much shorter attention span than before. So the engagement also has to evolve. And the way we do that really has got to be to think about the experience we're trying to deliver, the channels we're trying to reach through, and really what's the story going through those channels. So again, there's complexity there, but by following a simple approach as to how we think about building strategy and how we engage, we can certainly cut through a lot of that complexity to really focus on ultimately the difference we're going to make, which is that impact. So given we've talked a little bit now about customer journey and building insight, to do that is quite a complex challenge, really, to bring all these different needs that are present, both from our clients, from the stakeholders, from the industry at large, the asset development going on in different directions, the evolutions going on. There's a lot of different expertise to be brought together and to work together in a more effective way than before. And that's really where we pivot towards ourselves and the kind of changes that we've been going through to really meet that. And if I press on, so Avalere Health, which as has been mentioned was formerly Fishawack Health, we've really rebranded under that umbrella of Avalere Health to recognize the need to work together. So you can see the imagery of the birds in unison, which is the murmuration. I'm sure we've all seen that in our sort of dusk skies at times, the way they move together seamlessly, adapting to landscapes, things like that. And that's really what we want to embody with Avalere Health, is really bringing together all our capabilities under our collective roof to really work together, to break down barriers, remove silos, and deliver for our clients in the most powerful way. It's not just about having medical affairs capability and market access capability and marketing capability. It's really the fusion of that together. What does that mean? So we've been looking at that, and by rebranding under a collective new focus, that really enables us to really build better connections with our clients, build stronger partnerships, and really think about how we benefit all the different stakeholders that we're ultimately trying to reach through bringing the collective power of our innovation together. So just specifically about Avalere Health, as you can see, we've got 1,500 people under our roof, spread across 19 locations across all the key kind of geographic centres. Very much focused on strategy, as we mentioned before, is really important to cut through all that complex landscape. So we have around 250 strategists who work across our business, and we clearly put a lot of focus on digital and technology, as you'd expect. I'm sure that's the same for all the companies online today, but we know it's critically important. We know AI, omni-channel, the way we connect with our customers is much more technically advanced than it ever has been before. So we're certainly meeting that challenge. So in terms of that, what I'd like to do is really just say a little bit more about some of the key constituent parts within our business. So we're speaking primarily today, of course, in medical communications from a medical perspective, but we also have teams that focus on policy, market access, evidence generation. We have commercial teams who focus on brand strategy, campaigns in the commercial space, the marketing. We have a team of people who focus on really driving our AI and our digital and technology solutions forward. And we have a consulting team who really think about behavior change and think about some of the transformations that companies need to go through to meet some of the challenges of tomorrow. And as you can see, we work collectively and synergistically together, really to make sure that we do break down boundaries, or we cross boundaries, that we think about not just the execution, but the strategy that gets towards that, and that we think about the storytelling and the complexity of the insight and the data and the evidence, which really needs to come together to really make that change. And I think that's probably a good point to really hand over to Natasha to talk about our focus on insight and evidence, and really how that's also changing and an exciting place to be. So I guess over to you, Natasha.
Yeah. If we just put together a very quick demonstration of how science turns into health, because if this is our role in the world of med affairs, then insight is really the foundation, and Gary's verbalized that so well over the last few slides in terms of how important it is to have that insight. And I do want to sort of speak to something I've noticed coming into this organization versus my prior roles where I was delivering market research projects endlessly for healthcare companies. And I was doing that on behalf of mostly the commercial side of teams. So you've got the commercial side of brand teams that are plowing loads of money into doing that research with physicians, with patients, with people around patients, with patient advocacy groups, with those allied professionals I mentioned before. And there's a lot of that is really valuable, I think, if we think about what the work of Med Affairs and the work of our medical teams are doing to translate that science into making better health happen. If you can really dig into what physicians are thinking, what they believe, what their motivations are, what are their goals. So as you think about how you communicate and how you tailor that communication, you want to build some personas and you want to make sure that the content is produced in a really personalized and tailored way. And so we get into this world of omnichannel. But to build all of these personas, you've got to get to know your customer. So that's from the physician side. But one of the other things I think that we can draw across from the commercial world is how well commercial is trying to at least look at that experience of the person living with a condition. That question, what does better health really look like? You can answer that really superficially and say, if I'm living with a condition, surely better is there's less of the condition, less symptoms, less treatment burden, less time spent on treatment. I think all of these things are likely true, but people are whole people. They're not just their condition. They're not just their health. They want to be people beyond that. And I think when we start to look at, in a really broad way, at how people are living with different health conditions, not just the people who have been, say, diagnosed with one or seeking a diagnosis, but all of those around them, then you can start to understand what better health really means, what the difference could be if we can get that better science to them, to the right people to benefit. And so I think it's a really exciting time in what Med Affairs is, where we can learn from what is already out there and actually iterate that, take that even further, and begin this process of the application of science into better health in a more robust way. So that's really what we do over in the world of insight. And it is exciting to be part of Avalere, where it doesn't really matter that I technically actually sit in the consulting team, but I spend a lot of time talking to people from all over the business and helping them with their work. So that's it.
So thanks, Natasha. And I think this is just then really an opportunity to think about them in practice for those of us who work in the medical team within Avalere Health, what that access to Natasha and her team means in terms of insights and how we are sort of in practice able to bring that through into our day-to-day work. Essentially, our role is about simplifying the complex, and as we were saying at the start of this presentation, the science is getting increasingly complex, whether it's to do with, the new mechanisms of action that are coming through, all of the biomarker directed therapies, and for our role to work with our clients as those scientific storytellers, that really the ability to work with the insights team to set that from the beginning. And as Gary talked about, how we navigate that complexity by really using those insights as the way to set the direction and the framework and the context for that scientific story that we are building. And whether that is in the ability to really elevate our insight-seeking activities, really core part of what we do with our clients around advisory boards, but really having the ability to ask really deep insight-seeking questions of the experts that our clients are engaging with externally. Or increasingly, we're doing, a lot of the sort of cross-functional work around evidence generation planning and identifying, the gaps and the needs around the evidence plan. And again, there's a really, critical role for having those insights that everything is being driven towards what are the patient unmet needs, what are the insights uncovering about that we need to make sure that the evidence activities are going to address through the plan. So I think it's really some of those, key aspects of, our deliverables, our solutions, where the ability to draw on the insights that Natasha's team are able to bring to our medical work, where that sort of really creating that scientific value story is really critical. As we've sort of our North Star, is highlighted here on the slide, is really about science isn't finished until it's communicated. You can have all the cool, complex science in the world, but if you haven't built that compelling story that resonates with all of the different stakeholders, then, you know, the value of that science is lost. And on the next slide, Gary, this just, I think, really highlights, you know, how we work with our clients, you know, and I think this will be familiar to everybody. This is, you know, the core services that we in medical communications are driven by every day. But I think what we really just wanted to highlight here, something that I'm, you know, really proud of working, you know, with Gary in this role, is around our medical strategy and excellence team, because, you know, as we've talked about, the challenges that our clients are facing are increasingly complex, and so we can't stand still. We have to keep evolving as we, you know, evolve our solutions. So the strategy team that we have at Avalere Health, and I, you know, think is fairly unique, is that having built this team of strategists who are experienced in different areas with different focus, whether that's around patient engagement, whether it's around the omni-channel planning or the scientific strategy, of having built this team to really help us as an organization continue to evolve and innovate and be future-proof. And I think on the next slide, if we move to that, is just, you know, some of the areas that as a team, you know, we're really focusing on now in terms of, you know, how we evolve to think about what, you know, these AI-driven approaches are going to mean, you know, for our clients and their stakeholders. As Natasha was saying, how do we start to think about what omni-channel truly means for medical? I think it's a concept that is being embraced, but how to really do it well and what we can learn from the commercial teams that have already sort of forged that ground ahead of us, how we measure it, how we measure the impact of what we're doing in medical. I think that continues to be the challenge for all of us that we're facing. But our strategy team sort of really, you know, it's a really privileged position to be able to really grapple with these challenges and work together as a team to think about, as a company, how we evolve our services to meet them. I've been really proud as part of that role as well to develop, we've got an internal training program, which is called Compass, highlighted here. And that's really about having this objective of really embedding strategy within all of our teams, that it's not something that sits aside in an ivory tower somewhere in the organization, that it's really something that we want to drive through our teams. And so we've developed an internal training program that we've rolled out, and that's for the client services teams as well as the medical, because recognizing that strategy is something that, you know, belongs to everybody and everybody has a role in helping to deliver that. So I think, you know, that's something that, you know, is that we're really excited to be able to offer our teams. And I know Nick will talk more about, you know, all the other cool stuff that we deliver to make sure that work doesn't suck. But I think that's, you know, that's something that we're really proud of, and then building on that to looking to roll out, you know, further training in terms of how we then can apply a similar approach to thinking about omni-channel and engagement planning as well. And I think, you know, for me, it's just what Avalere Health means is, from that strategy perspective, is that we now have an easier and better ability to connect with those strategists that are across the organization that Gary highlighted. You know, we've got strategists now in digital and consulting, and how we can connect to work more effectively for our clients as well. I think that's, you know, personally something that's really exciting that I'm looking forward to. But I think that's for me to hand over to Nick and talk about how he brings that to life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Andree. Just zooming out slightly for a second, a third of our life is spent working. After sleep, work is the thing we do most in our life, which, apologies, but going back to the beginning of my sort of introduction, that's why it can't be purposeful, right? Why it has to be purposeful, sorry, why it can't suck. And I think as a team, as an employee experience and as a people team at Avalere Health, we use that as the starting point. And then as we build our employee experience, we focus on that big picture. We then focus on your voice. So we take the employee as much as sort of my colleagues here are just talking about how our patients are putting them at the center. We put our people at the center, and there's a lot of organizations that say they're people first, and then they don't show up for their people. And I think we're very intentional about taking an opposite view on that. So when we design our employee experience, we think about the voice of our people. We then combine that with the direction of the business. And why this is really important and coming under Avalere Health is we think about that brand new innovation we could bring into the marketplace. And the third bubble in sort of this Venn diagram of design is the future of work. As much as we talk about where we need to go today and tomorrow, we've got to design interventions, we've got to design an environment for our people to flourish in that's going to be fit for purpose in the next 5 years, not just now. And as we talk about skills, the biggest question that's sort of keeping people, professionals and business leaders up at night is, I don't know if I've got the right skills in my organization for us to execute the strategy, for us to grow as an organization. So how do you then, as a people team, come up with the right interventions and create the right environment to get the content just in time as people need it, but then build wonderful programs like Andree mentioned around specific skill sets that are needed for now and in the future. And we're trying to do that in a bit of a holistic way. We have a career development tool which we use to sort of identify skill gaps in your role and progression opportunities, and see the skills that you have today versus the skills you may need to grow and progress into another role. And for us, the rebrand is an opportunity to sort of put our stake in the ground and give people a compelling reason why you should not just join Avalere Health, not just stay at Avalere Health, but stay and thrive, right? And that's really exciting. And for us, we mentioned it a few times as we've gone through the presentation, but it's about connections. And if you can become connected, if you feel connected to a higher purpose, if you feel connected to a community, you feel that you've got a connected career, you feel that you're healthy in yourself and you're contributing to a healthy planet. And most importantly, you have flexibility to be able to action and do the thing you love to do in an environment that's connected. We think we've got quite a compelling reason for people to come and join and stay and thrive with us. And we know that through a couple of really key, interesting metrics. We run a Your Voice, which is a deep dive listening exercise for our employees once a year. And then we follow up with mini pulse checks. Our authenticity scores, which is how I like to measure a lot of things in our organization if we're doing things right, are through the roof. 88% of people can be their true authentic self at Avalere Health. And then when you're showing up as your true self and you don't have that mask on, and you can be psychologically safe, you can be vulnerable, but you can express opinions, that's when you innovate. That's when failure can happen in a safe environment, and you learn from that and you grow. When you have unpsychologically safe teams, and we make a big practice around driving psychological safety training to our managers and to our teams, when you have that element of psychological safety, that's when you can innovate and grow. And you can only get that if you're creating an environment which is authentic. And our wonderful D&I director, Sheena, isn't here to talk about this today, but we have a wide variety of D&I engagement groups which are building the community. And so when we talk about at Avalere Health, you will become connected. That's your true self, your authentic self, feeling connected to a community. And that actually bleeds through into everything we do. And now actually reinventing and redesigning our physical locations to make connections happen. We're redesigning floor plans to have connection zones. It's quite funny. If anyone's sort of a bit of a bird nerd, and I've been going into this a little bit around murmurations, but there's a first moment that happens in a murmuration, which is actually called the attraction phase, where birds initially come together. We're actually redesigning our floor plans in our physical office locations to create attraction zones. So people are colliding and meeting new people. We have a beautiful cauldron of capabilities, wonderful, diverse humans who are making the world a healthier place. We would be remiss if we didn't get those people together purposefully at the right time to spark something, to have a new conversation. So I know I'm talking about big picture stuff here, and we've only got a few minutes on a webinar, and happy to answer any questions that come through. But really, we are implementing what we call drumbeats, not lightning bolts, across our organization to change culture in order to create something truly unique and special. Because when it comes to change, whether that's an organizational change, a process change, a product change, essentially it's all driven by your experiences. So we focus on how is the employee, how are you experiencing your environment, the work, the change? Because if we can provide you a positive experience, that will shape your belief. If we can shape your beliefs turns into actions, and actions produce results and outcomes. But that all starts with how you experience, which is why my team is called the Career Experience Team and the Workplace Experience Team, to craft and shape and mold the experience of our colleagues so they can spend their time doing the thing they love to do. We don't have to attract people to our industry. It's, we are here, our humans are here to make the world a healthier place. What we have to do is provide them the right environment so they can just unleash their skills, their talents, their love into the world and into the work they do. And we're trying to do that every single day. Happy to answer any questions you've got around that. But it's been great to ramble at you on my soapbox for a few minutes.
So there we go. That's pretty much it from us in terms of update on Avalere Health. I guess it's over to you, Peter, and over to you all collectively for, as Nick says, any questions. I'll come off share screen, so get a better view. But yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so we've got 10 minutes to talk about this. I'm going to come back to attraction zones and drum beats and all that sort of, I love that sort of terminology, but it seems a bit of a, it's a bit of a mystery to me when you're sitting on the outside of an organization. But I'm not going to let you get away completely. And Gary, I'm going to put you on the spot, okay? Because I don't expect you to go too far with this, and I know we don't want to get bogged down in it. But it does genuinely just intrigue me. An organization of 1,600 people, you've got a number of well-known brands. You've gone through a process to come out with a new brand and a new organization and so on. I don't know whether you want to give a shout out some of the brands that have gone. I mean, Fishawack Health we've talked about, but there are a number of other brands in there which people will recognize. But just give me a sense of the process that you've gone through, presumably not only just over the last few days sort of thing. Something like this does take a bit of time, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And I think Nick's hinted at some of those things, that we're trying to build a better employee experience. And we do that when people work together as easily as possible. We break down any barriers that prevent that, either physically or in a virtual sense. But also we think about what, genuinely thinking about putting our customers at the center. We, as agencies, we always tell our clients we're putting their customers at the center, and it's really important that agencies also put their customers at the center, which is our clients. And to do that, truly, we know the world of pharma is changing, that people need to work together more closely to affect the solutions, to dig the insights that are needed to make the right strategy, etc., etc. And medical affairs is not a function now that operates just on its own. It works closely with the evidence teams. It works closely with its commercial colleagues. We talk about things like unified customer journey. That's where medical affairs and marketing work together on a journey for their customers together. So if they're working together, we need to work together. And having parts of our business that are kind of siloed into, you mentioned about the older parts of our business, like Blue Latitude and, we ourselves, Fishawack Communications and other parts of the business like PRMA, and, they all work absolutely fantastically well on their own. And in some respects, they'll continue to do so. But by removing some of the barriers, and that can be mental, physical, and operational, but by enabling our businesses to work more closely together, we can develop those better solutions for our clients, operate in that safe space that Nick was talking about, where we innovate better by not having constraints. And so literally breaking down physical walls almost enables us to do that in a much more powerful way. So you're right, Peter, we've been thinking about doing this for quite some time, and it's not something you just do overnight. We obviously observe the industry like everybody else does, and we feel that to rebrand under this umbrella is a kind of a reset in terms of how we want to be seen and how we see the external landscape. So I hope that answers that particular question. I'm obviously open to any of my colleagues to embellish that as well.
Okay. Anyone want to say anything? Or Nick, maybe can we bring you in? Because a question came in quite early, which you said in the chat that you'd answer in terms of I wasn't quite sure what. Obviously, someone's heard you talking or the company talking about digital coaching and so on. Do you want to just pick up on that one? I mean, I guess that's partly following this line of thought. You've got to sort of bring the whole company together, and you're out there sort of training and coaching, and there's a coherent program in there somewhere. So do you want to talk to that one a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we try and do is think about how do we close skill gaps fast, and sometimes that's internal delivery like Andree's running. Sometimes that's actually creating a culture, like a coaching culture, or we plug something in through Coursera. So we have a partnership with a digital coaching platform called Coach Hub. And what's really exciting about this is normally coaching or exec coaching is exactly what it says on the tin. It's for the top tier of your organization. It's for a few people. We wanted to challenge the status quo and actually offer coaching up and down the entire organization for people who felt they had that little marginal gains. If they will talk about this, but marginal gains and improvement and unlocking performance. So we partner with Coach Hub, which essentially is like Match.com but with world-class coaches. So you go on an app and you pair, you say your preferences, and we offer that as a benefit globally for all of our people, which is exciting. Alongside, we offer Coursera globally for every single human being that walks in, because we know that the faster we can close people's skill gaps, the quicker we can innovate and quicker we can grow. We don't have to spend ages trying to buy talent in when we can grow and develop it ourselves, right? And that's key and really important to us.
This, oh, sorry. I'm going to come back to Gary on this one, but I think you just to spell this out. Holly's asking, do the internal names still exist? Yeah. Blue Latitude, Fishawack. So, or
yeah, we don't.
Yeah, and again, that's probably slightly what I was getting at was how are you actually abandoning the names completely, or how does it work in house?
We don't use them. We don't need to use them. So we work in a seamless way. So it's a great way of getting everyone together by coming under Avalere Health.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's clear. Okay. Natasha, you've got several questions coming at you about use of insights and what that. Do you want to you can see them, pick up on this a little bit, talk a little bit more about how you're doing that.
Yeah, I'm going to start very big picture, because that is the kind of thinker I am, but lots of insight people are the other way around. I think there's a really interesting thread in some of these questions around how can we look beyond simply saying a person's living with a condition. I think Sital's expressed that really nicely in a question about there's so many more aspects outside the condition that have an impact on patients. And one of the things that I think we're doing by doing this rebrand, by putting our teams together, is almost extending a challenge to our clients, to pharmaceutical companies and to biotech companies to say, okay, we're not working in silos. Should you be? If you were to restart your business tomorrow, would you build it in these silos that you currently have? Or would you take a slightly different approach? And this matters because if we want to tackle some of the bigger challenges that are faced in healthcare, in terms of access, in terms of health literacy, in terms of people having the empowerment and the advocacy that they need, or to be able to access the resources that they need to live with conditions that they're living with, or to understand what to even expect from treatment, there are some bigger issues at play than simply, well, there's our drug and there's the science behind our drug. That stuff is important, but there are some bigger things there. And right now, sadly, my ability to conduct research and really bring these things to life is constrained by what my clients are interested in finding out. And I challenge as much as I can. Our teams challenge as much as they can. We all share similar values about this. But we operate in that reality of saying, well, we try and widen the boundaries of the way you're thinking about this, clients. We can make better health happen by thinking a bit broader. And I don't want to pretend that we've achieved that in any way. I think our rebrand towards Avalere Health is us sort of putting our weight behind that and saying, we think bigger. We think that the industry as a whole should think bigger. And there are some great questions here also about how do you hear from people? How do you hear their voices? I think social media listening is a wonderful tool. And really, it's a tool the same way you look at all research tools and you think, what will I learn from this and what do I not learn? So with social media listening, who's not posting on social media? I'm not. I've slowly over time just deleted all my social media because I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. But that means there's a lot of us, well, maybe there's a lot of us, I don't know. There's going to be more of us out there than simply those who are too young or too old or whatever the typical misnomers might be about who's on social media within people living with, say, breast cancer. Now, that is an interesting one because you have this really visible community. You have walks, you have a pink ribbon, you have a lot of support. What if you are a slightly different type of breast cancer where your outcomes are not going to reflect the pink ribbons and the walks? Are you actually left feeling more isolated and more alone than you would be if you could be part of that group? Are you posting? Are you actually retreating? Who are you leaning on? And some of this stuff becomes so variable depending on the healthcare system that you're in and the support that you can access within that. So social media listening gets you one perspective. When you acknowledge that perhaps I'm seeing some really raw information here in their own words, the way they conceptualize it, that's wonderful from a certain group of people. I now need to go digging and make sure I can hear the voices of the others, or at least I present that information back with the acknowledgement that this doesn't represent everybody. So I think all of these tools are really useful. It was a really nice question about how you get people to, or how you can ask people and understand their health beliefs. And you ask yourself, what do you believe about your own health? And how would you elicit that on yourself by yourself? You can just ask questions. So I could ask Nick, for example, Nick, what would happen if you didn't get enough sleep every night? You'd have some beliefs, but don't answer that. We don't have time for that. But I could ask you that, and you could tell me what you think the consequences might be. then no offense to you, Nick, but you're not a sleep doctor, so you don't really know. You'd be expressing your beliefs about that have built up over time through your own experience with yourself, what you've seen with other people. Probably the media has elicited some amount of alarm about you not getting your 8 hours or something. You may be wearing a fitness tracker that's also eliciting some alarm about how much deep sleep you're getting or not. All these things will have formed a belief. So you could ask, but you can also get people to visualize stuff. And this also can be really helpful when people have been living with conditions for a really long time, in particular, when people have started to perhaps normalize the impacts. And I think conditions where there's a lot of chronic pain and fatigue in particular are ones where humans are wonderful survivors. And so we will just assimilate that experience and we'll keep moving forward. People generally want to survive and move forward and don't then pay attention. You can't afford to psychologically really pay attention to all the pain that you're in and the restriction that you've experienced. But if you were to take a snapshot of your life today and your life, say, 10 years ago, before this condition was so much worse, or before it even manifested, you might be shocked to see what that looks like. And there are simple techniques that we can do with, like, say, card sorting, where you have someone sort their symptoms based on frequency. And you don't say anything. You let them sort the symptoms into 3 piles, say, often, sometimes, never. And then you ask them to take a step back and you give them that space and say, how does this look to you? And often those are the moments where you get people saying, wow, I didn't realize that this is what my experience looked like. And before that, maybe they've been expressing beliefs about their condition, about what they can expect from treatment, that now are thrown into contrast when you've built the picture with them, or they've built the picture for you. And humans can't really process that totality of experience. It's not particularly helpful for us to do it when, again, we just want to survive and move forward. So there are really powerful techniques that you can do that will bring that to life, that will help make sure you're not just conveying the most superficial story, because that can be what happens if you just assume, well, you know, everyone living with cancer is going to experience it in this particular way. If it's a solid tumor and you're getting chemotherapy, or if you're receiving IO for one solid tumor versus another, surely that's a fairly similar experience. But actually, there's so much more to it in terms of stigma, in terms of the psychological burden, in terms of even understanding and having resource available, what your journey has been like all the way through to that point. There's so much more in that you want to get to that level of depth. I feel like I talk about for hours, so I'm going to stop talking.
I was going to say, we're going to bring you back for another webinar, Natasha. Okay,
Yeah.
We'll talk about insights. I want to bring Andree in, and we are running out of time.
I thought I was going to escape, Peter.
No, absolutely not. But let's just make sure we cover off the obvious question here and how it's impacting, Andree, in the sort of work you do. Let's talk about AI just for a little bit. Just give me a sense of how a department like yours, a company like yours, is starting to look at the AI tools. We've talked about them as tools. Can you give us some insights into what you're doing, how you're approaching it, what your thinking is?
I can, and I think probably I will just give Gary a heads up, because I know one of the initiatives that we have internally is we have an AI council, and that council is formed of members, again, representing the way that we work from all capabilities and functions across Avalere Health. So obviously medical is represented in that, and, you know, thinking about it in the ways that I'm sure, you know, all the organizations of, you know, where people are represented on the call are, of thinking about, you know, what might it mean for being able to streamline some of the processes around, you know, our literature analyses, gap analyses, that type of process. What might it mean for, like, you know, patient lay summaries for publications, etc. I mean, I think we're all also very aware of the challenges around these tools and these platforms. You only have to look at what the last few days in the news have been with what's going on at, like, ChatGPT and who's the CEO, and I think they've had 4 in the past 3 days. It's a field that's very exciting, but obviously when you're grounded in some of the challenges like our clients are around the compliance and regulatory and data protection and all those frameworks as well, I think it's exciting, but it's tempered. And I think, Gary, if you want to add some more specifics around what that AI council is kind of looking at and where we see for medical some of the potential and the immediate next steps being for us.
Yeah, for sure. And it is a really complex field. There's so many parts to it. You know, on the one hand, there's evaluating the different tools that we need in the future to embrace AI. Some of them might be tools that are already out there, and there's thousands of tools that are out there, and they're increasing every day. Silicon Valley is focusing on nothing else but startups that are pumping out .ai tools. And they're going to be tools that help, you know, with literally with medical writing, or tools with digging into insight, tools that, you know, developing personas for customer journeys. There's a whole range of tools that are going to be available. But the question is, which ones do you use? How do you use them? When do you use them? Can we use them? And that's a lot of what the industry is going through at the moment, isn't it? You know, a lot of determination around governance, even things like is the use of AI covered in our client MSAs and things like that. You know, it's just not well defined at the moment. So everyone's in this kind of evaluation phase, small pockets of use, you know, but by and large, you know, I think pharma itself, you know, every time we see a technological advance, you know, that can impact on pharma, whether it's like social media, a few years back now when it used to be called tweeting, you know, or the rise of omni-channel, you know, the industry is generally quite slow to adopt external technological innovation, even though itself is a driver of innovation. It always takes time because of the complexity, as Andree says, governance, you know, around what can we say and not say, particularly medical affairs, where we know there's even more regulations and governance at play. So it takes time for the industry to create a position on these technologies. And I think that's going to be a collective conversation that we all have in this community. I don't know if any of you were at MAPS meeting earlier in the year. I was there in I think it was Nashville, talk about AI there. And, you know, there was conversation around, you know, what use cases are you evaluating in that meeting with the panelists, the pharmaceutical leaders, you know, and that's what's happening. There's use case evaluation going on. And really, you know, we will all probably settle in on the areas where we think that AI can make the best use. And it is going to be a tool that's here to stay, I'm sure. It's going to be life-changing for many of us in many different ways. Hopefully all beneficial, but, you know, to your point, Andree, you know, there's a lot of chat going on even in OpenAI about how they see the future of AI going, a lot of conversation and disagreement on that, and CEOs come and go based on where the future is going. So, you know, we're all part of this conversation. We see it as a community conversation. For example, there's been a white paper authored recently on AI. I was on a panel contributing to that, as were, I'm sure, many others on this call. And so, you know, we have our own place on AI. We're evaluating, we're determining, we're thinking about what tools can we also maybe think about creating ourselves. But it's got to be able to be, you know, commissioned and used within pharma. And so that's where you get into conversations around kind of closed loop tools, federation of data, how do we protect data security? Can we use AI in small pockets? And that's the kind of conversation that's probably going to be happening. And that kind of move forward into kind of federated closed loop applications before going into the true Wild West of AI, which is how do you enable searching using the full capability of AI using content, you know, which is specific. That's going to be the challenge in the future that we get to.
Okay. Nick, I'll just finish with you just briefly. The attraction zones, drum beats, all the rest of that terminology. Just out of interest, because that's what I was thinking when you were talking about that. I think you were saying attraction zones being built within offices and so on. Just very simply and quickly, where do you stand? Where's Avalere stand at the moment on remote working, hybrid working? You know, just give us a sense of how, because there is still a little bit of a jury out on that. Just give us a little bit of sense to finish off how you're working.
Yeah, absolutely. Organizations have a choice, Peter, at the moment. They can be a mandate or a magnet. We are choosing to be a magnet. We don't think autonomous adults should be told you have to be in certain times and the rules are applying. So we have what we call a mobile working philosophy. Our job is to create the environments that draw you in. That, yeah, if you go to, you love it there. But also we understand that work and life is no longer work and life. It's blended. It's mixed. It's just life. We've got to be able to offer an employee experience that blends and moves the way that you need to blend and move so you can make better health happen, right? So for that, we create inspiring spaces, and we're on a journey to do that, which is very exciting. And we empower you as a human to deliver your best work in the place that fits you, your colleagues, and your clients' needs. That might be in one of our locations. That might be at home in your office. That might be at Starbucks. But as long as you can deliver amazing outcomes for our clients, then that's the place you deliver amazing outcomes for our clients. And leaders are empowered to let's bring people together for this purpose, right?
Okay. Look, I'm going to stop there. I get a sense we could carry on talking for a while, but we are over time. So if you don't mind, I'm going to draw the line. A huge thank you to you guys for coming online and talking, and it's very insightful hearing you talk. Anybody watching this either today or looking at the recording later on, please, I know that I can speak for you and say you're very happy to hear from people. LinkedIn is an easy way. Please, people watching this, reach out to you guys. And obviously the website's there and so on. They can check out what you're up to. If anyone's interested in what I'm doing, medcommsnetworking.com. But just for the sake of the recording, I'm just going to ask you all to give us a little wave, say goodbye to everybody, and look after yourselves. But thank you very much for joining us. Take care. Bye.